My husband made me sign a prenup that gave everything to his parents in case of divorce. I agreed, blindly in love. After 10 years, he left me for his secretary. His mother said, "Now get out with nothing." But when she opened the door to their new home, she found I was 26 when I met Thomas. I was working long shifts at a physical therapy clinic in Dallas, mostly rehabbing weekend warriors and the occasional pro athlete. I was proud of my job. I paid my way through school, didn't come for much. My parents lived 3 hours away in a 2-bedroom rental, and I sent them money when I could. Thomas came in one morning with a torn ACL from a rugby game. Confident, charming, and honestly kind of arrogant, but not in a way that felt threatening at first. He had that rich kid polish. Expensive watch, perfect teeth, casual name-dropping. I assumed he was some investment guy blowing through inheritance, but he said he was starting his own consulting firm and wanted to build it from the ground up. He flirted. I flirted back. We went out for coffee. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner into weekend trips. Before long, I was spending nights at his high-rise in Uptown, feeling like I'd walked into someone else's life. I never had a man open my car door or send flowers after a bad day. He said all the right things. Made me feel seen. Safe. We got married the next year. 2 weeks before the wedding, he brought up the prenup. His mother, Celeste, was the one pushing it, he said. "It's just to make her feel better," he told me while we were lying in bed, his hand tracing circles on my shoulder. "They've got all these trusts, and they're super controlling about inheritance stuff. It's just paperwork, babe. Doesn't mean anything. We're forever." I didn't have a lawyer. I was young and in love. I signed. The prenup said everything would revert to his family in the event of divorce. The house, the business, any shared assets. I didn't fight it. I thought, why would I? We're not getting divorced. 10 years later, I was 36. No kids, because he kept saying not yet. I'd stepped back from my job, worked part-time, and spent the rest managing our home, his calendar, even helped with his bookkeeping when he got too busy. I made that house run. I made his life run. And then one night, he came home late, sat down like it was any other evening, and said it was over. Just like that. "I've been seeing someone," he said, like he was reading off a menu. "Eliza. She's my executive assistant. I love her. I want a divorce." No fight. No apology. Just done. I didn't cry at first. I just stared. It felt like someone had unplugged the world. The next day, Celeste showed up. I'll never forget her perfume. Too sweet, too thick. She walked in without knocking. Sat down at my kitchen table like it was still hers. "You know the terms," she said, placing a red folder on the table. "You signed it. Pack your things and go. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be." That was it. 10 years gone. I left with 2 suitcases, no money, no car. He'd put it in the business name. I moved into a crappy apartment in Fort Worth. The walls were thin, the AC barely worked. I went back to the clinic part-time, just to survive. I had $113 in my checking account. No friends left. I'd poured everything into his life. He was all I had. But I wasn't stupid. While I didn't have my name on anything, I did have memory. I had years of files. I'd helped Thomas write off personal trips as client dinners, edited invoices, backdated expenses. I knew his payroll schemes, his fake consulting clients. He didn't hide it from me. He thought I was part of it. For months, I said nothing. Just watched. Eliza moved in. They bought a new home in Highland Park, and of course, Celeste's name was all over it. Everything ran through her trusts. They thought I was broken. Gone. But I was building something. Quietly, I started collecting proof. I pulled up old email accounts, screenshots, cloud backups. I reached out to a tax attorney in Houston and a retired investigator from my clinic days. I paid them with what little I had left. It wasn't much, but enough to start unraveling things. I found holes. Big ones. Fraud. Falsified documents. Fake vendors. Celeste's name was everywhere. And then, Celeste posted a photo online. Her and Eliza smiling on the front porch of their new house, champagne in hand. Caption said, "New beginnings." That was the moment I knew exactly how I'd ruin them. I didn't act right away. That's what people like Celeste count on, that you'll lash out fast, sloppy, emotional. That you'll make noise but not impact. So I stayed quiet, focused. I kept working part-time at the clinic. Nights, I dug deeper. Thomas hadn't changed a single password. I logged into his old email. I pulled reports from QuickBooks. Found bank statements tied to offshore accounts I didn't even know existed during our marriage. Eliza was getting paid consulting fees months before the divorce. I printed it all, dated it, filed it. 6 months after he left me, I was sitting in a cramped office across from a woman named Carla, a forensic accountant. She worked in whistleblower litigation. She flipped through my binder without saying much. After an hour, she closed it and looked at me dead in the eyes.
"This is big," she said. "Very big.
But if we move forward, you don't get to unring the bell." I nodded. I'd already rung it in my heart. We filed a whistleblower complaint with the IRS. I had to use my real name eventually. It wasn't anonymous if I wanted the payout. Carla submitted everything through official channels, including a sealed packet to the Texas Comptroller's office.
Fraud.
Tax evasion. Falsifying federal documents. I wasn't just going after Thomas. I was going after the structure that protected him, that enabled him, that rewarded him for discarding me like trash. Then I waited. In the meantime, I watched their lives from a distance. Celeste started doing charity galas again. Eliza got pregnant. They threw an engagement party, which Thomas live-streamed. He looked smug. She looked like everything I wasn't, young, soft-spoken, easily shaped. I hated her, but not because she won. I hated her because she didn't know what was coming. The first sign came 8 months after I filed. Thomas's firm was audited. Quietly, at first. Then came a state investigation. Then federal. I watched from my tiny apartment as his business accounts froze one by one. He started laying off staff. They called it restructuring. Eliza stopped posting online. Celeste, though, she didn't stop. She thought they were untouchable. She held a holiday party in that new house, flew in a chef from Napa, posted every detail online. That was her mistake. Because one of those photos had a background shot of framed documents, property deeds, and trust paperwork.
I zoomed in. Noticé da signature mismatch.
I sent that to Carla. That's when things got serious. Subpoenas started landing. IRS agents visited the house. Not once. Not twice.
Multiple times.
A friend who still worked at the firm texted me, "What the hell is going on?" I just wrote back, "Ask your boss." Then Celeste called me. After 10 years of her barely acknowledging me as more than the helpful wife, she actually called. "How dare you?" she hissed into the phone. "You're destroying our legacy." I said, "You destroyed me first."
Click.
Thomas emailed me 2 weeks later. A long message, full of bullshit about how we used to be partners, and how I should stop this madness because I wouldn't like where it leads. I didn't reply. I sent the email to Carla instead. Then the real hammer dropped. A federal fraud case opened. They seized the Highland Park house. Froze all trust-linked assets. The business tanked. Investors pulled out. Eliza left Thomas, moved back to her parents in Colorado with a baby. He didn't follow. I wasn't done yet. But I was close. What they didn't understand is that when you strip someone of everything, love, home, dignity, what's left isn't weakness. What's left is precision. And I had plenty left to give. I thought I had seen the worst of it. The investigation was in full swing, the house was seized, and Thomas's empire was collapsing brick by brick. I thought I was finally in control. But then Carla called. Her voice was tight. "They're coming after you now," she said.
What?
Why? Retaliation. They're saying you were complicit during the marriage, that you helped falsify documents, that this was a joint operation. I felt the blood drain from my face. For a second, I couldn't speak. I had played a part, yes. I'd filed expense reports, signed reimbursement forms, even backdated some invoices under Thomas's direction. But I was following instructions. I didn't benefit. I didn't know what it all meant until later. They're trying to flip the narrative, Carla said. Make you the scapegoat. I hung up and sat in the dark for hours. It made sense. Of course they'd do this. Thomas had always been good at charming people when it mattered. And Celeste? She was a seasoned manipulator. I should have known they wouldn't go quietly. A week later, I got served. Formal notice of a lawsuit, conspiracy to defraud, aiding and abetting tax fraud, theft of proprietary documents. They were suing me. Not criminal charges, civil for now, but it was enough to put me on edge. I called Carla in a panic. They're bluffing, she said. They want to bury you in fear. Make you settle. Make the IRS question your credibility. It worked. At least for a while. I couldn't sleep. I started having panic attacks again, like I hadn't since college. I lost 10 pounds in a month. Every time the phone rang, I jumped. But then I remembered something, one small, stupid detail that changed everything. An old USB drive. I hadn't touched it in years. It was buried in a shoebox with other junk I'd packed when I left the house. On it were backups of QuickBooks files I'd used to help Thomas do taxes one year. Full copies, with unedited logs. I plugged it in and opened the files. There it was. Dozens of entries marked edited by admin, dated before and after transactions had posted. Notes changed. Vendors switched. Receipts attached months later. One folder was labeled Alt_2021_recon, a backup Thomas made after the audit began, trying to cover his tracks. I printed everything and sent it to Carla.
She forwarded it to the IRS.
3 days later, the federal case against me was dropped. Quietly. No apology. But I was off the hook. I expected Thomas to back off. Instead, he doubled down. He filed a defamation suit against me. Claimed my whistleblower complaint was malicious, that I cost him reputation, revenue, and future earnings. His lawyer, same guy who drafted our prenup, sent me a 14-page demand letter. That's when I decided I was done playing defense. Because what Thomas didn't know was that Eliza had started talking. Not to the IRS.
To me.
She reached out one night through a throwaway email. Said she didn't know how deep the fraud ran. Said she left because Thomas got violent after the money disappeared. Said Celeste had offered her a bribe to stay quiet. I met her in a coffee shop near DFW, neutral ground. She looked tired. Older than the last photos I'd seen. Her baby was in a stroller, fussy. I'm sorry, she said. For all of it. I didn't forgive her, not fully, but I listened. She gave me emails, texts, bank transfers made in her name that she never authorized. She gave me the missing piece. Proof of coercion. Proof of threats. Proof that Thomas had forged not just financial documents, but medical records, insurance fraud from when he claimed a workplace injury years ago and pocketed a payout. I handed it all over to Carla. That's when the real storm started. And it wasn't just Thomas in the crosshairs anymore. The fallout from Eliza's documents hit faster than I expected. Within 2 weeks, the U.S. Attorney's Office got involved. This wasn't just tax fraud anymore. This was insurance fraud, identity misuse, financial coercion. Now the case had legs.
And teeth.
And Celeste? She panicked. I heard through Carla that her attorneys tried to cut a side deal. Claimed she was a victim of her son's deceit. But they had her signature on forged contracts, wire transfers, even 2 separate shell companies that she helped open. She'd always acted like she was smarter than the system. But now the system was watching. Thomas went quiet. No more emails. No texts. His phone was shut off. The last time I saw his face was on the news, walking into a courthouse in a wrinkled suit, head down, no Eliza, no Celeste, no smug expression. But even then, I wasn't done. I filed a separate civil suit. This wasn't about the money, not really. It was about making every rotten thing he did to me public record. About forcing his name into court documents where I got to tell the story. I listed everything. Emotional abandonment, financial manipulation, coercion, fraud. His lawyers tried to block it, tried to say the prenup waived any civil liability. But Carla had anticipated that. The prenup didn't cover criminal acts. It didn't protect him from perjury. And it damn sure didn't protect him from someone with receipts. During discovery, we subpoenaed records from his firm, emails, payroll, insurance claims. Every single file that had my name or initials on it. I had to sit for 2 full depositions, answer every question twice, and relive every betrayal in a fluorescent-lit conference room with a court reporter watching me like a hawk. But I didn't break. I didn't flinch. Because I knew what was coming. And I knew Celeste had even more to lose than Thomas. She wasn't just his mother. She was the executor of the family's trust. That trust owned properties across 3 states, half of which hadn't paid proper property taxes in years. I had proof that she'd funneled money out of the trust into her personal accounts, probably to fund their family foundation that hosted all those galas and wine tastings. The state launched an audit on the foundation. That's when Celeste's name hit the newspapers. For once, she didn't have a publicist on standby. She couldn't PR spin her way out of this one. But even with everything crumbling, part of me still felt hollow. Like something unfinished was hanging over me.
And it was.
Because for all the damage I'd done, through evidence, legal filings, and public shame, I hadn't yet delivered the part that truly mattered to me, making them feel what I felt the day I was told to get out with nothing.
Not yet.
But I was getting closer. The civil case dragged on for months. Thomas delayed at every turn, motion after motion, trying to stall, bury me in legal fees, make me give up out of exhaustion. But I didn't. Carla helped me apply for assistance through the whistleblower program. They covered part of the costs. The rest I scraped together. I even picked up weekend shifts at the clinic. I'd lost a decade to that man. I wasn't about to lose this too. During one hearing, I sat just 10 feet from him. He looked thinner, grayer.
His suit didn't fit right.
No one sat beside him. No family, no Eliza. His lawyer passed him notes, but he never looked up. Not once. The judge ruled that the civil trial would proceed. The prenup was inadmissible for this kind of fraud claim. That meant everything I'd filed would be presented in court. Public record.
No settlements. No NDAs.
He'd have to face it all under oath. That was the first time I saw him flinch. But it wasn't enough. I wanted Celeste in that courtroom too. And I knew exactly how to get her there. Remember that fake charity foundation she ran? The one she used to fund her events and pay herself a 6-figure salary? I went back through every photo she'd ever posted, fundraisers, auctions, check presentations. I tracked the people who attended, the businesses that donated, the board members who never existed. Then I found something interesting. 3 years ago, she hosted a veterans benefit dinner and claimed the proceeds went to a local housing nonprofit. But I knew that nonprofit. I used to volunteer there. And I knew for a fact they never received a check. I contacted the director, sent screenshots, tax filings, and a photo of Celeste presenting a giant fake novelty check with the nonprofit's name on it. They forwarded it to the state attorney general. 2 weeks later, Celeste was subpoenaed for charity fraud. Charges pending. Foundation frozen. Donations under review. She'd spent her entire life curating an image of high society grace, Southern elegance, civic pride. Now her name was tied to embezzlement, public deception, exploiting veterans. She went silent, shut down all her social media. Friends stopped defending her. Sponsors pulled out of her remaining events. I heard, through a mutual acquaintance, that she'd put her lake house up for sale. Quietly. No listing photos. No agent. Just trying to get liquid before the IRS took that too. Meanwhile, Eliza and I kept talking. We weren't friends, but she was helping me. She gave sworn testimony. Turned over her emails. Admitted she'd been part of it all, and that she was scared to leave until the money dried up. She didn't ask for forgiveness. Just wanted her kid to grow up clean of the mess. I respected that. I didn't trust her, but I respected it. Thomas tried one last move. He filed for bankruptcy. Thought he could wash his hands of everything. But Carla was ready. She filed an objection with the court, citing active fraud investigations and whistleblower protections. The judge paused the bankruptcy and allowed our civil suit to proceed. That meant he couldn't hide his assets, couldn't shift them to shell companies, couldn't pass them off to Celeste or stash them offshore.
He was stuck.
Naked.
Exposed.
Exactly where I wanted him. But I wasn't finished. Because they still didn't feel what I felt. Not really. That moment when you realize the person you trusted most not only lied, but planned it, weaponized your loyalty, treated your love like currency, discarded you like a problem. They still hadn't felt that. But they would.
Soon.
The court date was set. Civil trial. Me versus Thomas. My lawyer advised I settle. He said it would be faster, cleaner. But I refused. This wasn't about closing a chapter. It was about reading the whole thing out loud. In front of strangers. In front of him. The courthouse was old, cracked tile floors, cold hallways. I sat at the plaintiff's table, hands folded, watching Thomas walk in like he didn't recognize me. He avoided my eyes.
No Celeste. No Elisa.
Just him and his lawyer, carrying a folder that looked too thin for what was coming. I took the stand on day 2. I spoke for nearly 3 hours. I told them about the prenup, about giving up my job, about running his company from behind the scenes. I told them about Celeste showing up the day after the divorce announcement, telling me to get out with nothing. Her exact words. I saw the court reporter pause after I said it, like even she wasn't ready for that level of cruelty. Then I handed over the USB drive. The whole courtroom went quiet when it was submitted. Financial logs. Edit trails. All with Thomas's digital fingerprints on them. His lawyer objected. Judge overruled. Then came the emails from Eliza. Printouts. Dated. Attached with her signed affidavit. Then came the photos of fake charity checks. Celeste's name. The foundation letterhead. The nonprofit directors signed statements saying they never received a cent. By the end of my testimony, Thomas looked like he was shrinking. Like the air was too heavy for him. But it wasn't just about him anymore.
It was about me.
That courtroom became the place where I said everything I was never allowed to say during our marriage. How I'd buried my ambitions because I believed in his dreams. How I'd justified his coldness because I thought loyalty was supposed to be hard. How I'd lived 10 years thinking that love meant sacrifice, and that sacrifice meant silence. No more. When I stepped down, the judge called a recess. I walked past Thomas without looking at him. Just kept walking. Out into the hallway, out into the sun. I stood there for a few minutes, not crying, not smiling, just breathing. Because I was no longer his wife. I was no longer their anything. I was my own witness now. But there was still one thing left to do. Still one piece of the revenge they didn't see coming. And it was going to make everything else feel like the warm-up. The verdict came 3 weeks later. Thomas was found liable for financial fraud, emotional damages, and breach of fiduciary duty. The court awarded me $1.6 million in damages, plus legal costs. But I wasn't celebrating the money. Because I knew something Thomas and Celeste didn't. The IRS whistleblower reward had finally processed. It hit my new business account the same day the verdict dropped, for $0.2 million. It didn't come with a press release. No fireworks. Just a number sitting in my account, clean and earned. I didn't buy a sports car. I didn't move to Europe. I bought a modest adobe home in Santa Fe, surrounded by silence and sky. I paid off my parents' debts. I helped Eliza with her legal fees, under the table, quietly. She got full custody and a new job. We never spoke again. And Celeste? She lost everything. The foundation was permanently dissolved. The state filed charges, and while they didn't push for prison, they bled her dry. Legal fees.
Fines.
Reputation. She tried to hold on to the lake house. But after she was publicly shamed for exploiting charity donors and veterans, no less, no one came near her. The house sat empty for a year before she sold it at a loss. One night, I got a call from a blocked number. I answered. It was her. You think you won, she said, voice shaky. No, I said. I know I did.
Click.
I never heard from her again. And Thomas? He filed for bankruptcy again. This time, the judge let it through. After all, he had nothing left to give.
His business was dead.
His name was mud. Nobody would hire him. He had to sell his car, his watch, everything he once used to make himself feel like a man. Last I heard, he was living in a rented condo near Garland, working under the table for a guy who installs office cubicles. He tried to appeal the verdict. It was denied. He tried to start a podcast about men's rights and corrupt women. It flopped. No one listened. And me? I rebuilt my life on truth. On scars. I didn't trust easily anymore, but I lived wide awake. Some nights, I still think about that day Celeste came to my house with that red folder and told me to get out with nothing. She thought she was ending me, but she was starting something she couldn't stop. My revenge wasn't a single moment. It wasn't loud. It was slow, measured,
Precise.
and when it came, it took everything from them, just like they tried to take everything from me. But I'm still standing. And they're the ones with nothing now.